I always loved film. I was always amazed by it and had this bizarre obsession with how to make a film.
To me, that was like a combination of the visual, photography and writing combined.
And the way that those stories can really transport people. And so between that, I love to read. Like I loved that kind of escape.
And somehow got onto a set and thought, oh my God, this is magic, and people are creating magic, and it was very cool. And so everything that I'd heard about kind of came true in that moment, and afterwards I thought film is the way to go.
People say Hollywood is the place where dreams come true. So eager to drop everything and travel hundreds, if not thousands of miles towards hope, only to find startling old ideals still in power. That is what women are being subjected to. Back rooms, pay cuts, harassment, and staggered in managerial positions only to be treated like plastic.
After college, I went home. I went on a trip to Europe with my mom and my sister, and then I came back and I was like, I don't really know what to do. I didn't have a job, so I called a friend. I knew 2 people who lived in LA, both of whom were Santa Clara alums, and they said I should come down and just start. So I lived on one of their couches for about a month, found a job, found an apartment, and I started working as an assistant really quickly.
After college, I started working for Sony Pictures Television in about 2011. And in that group, I've been working for their networks division, which owns 3 movie channels in the US that I've helped oversee the launch of 2 of. And so I do programming for them, where I help design the schedule and sort of design and figure out what movies we're going to show, and work closely with my bosses on what TV channels what TV shows we would acquire. So it's more the corporate side of that whole wonderful world of entertainment. I interviewed with Sony for 9 months before they hired me, and they hired me on a shoestring budget. I took a pay cut to go work for them.
I started out as a post PA right out of Santa Clara in 2011 on 2 films that were predominantly being done by males. And then after that, I moved on to another film, which was predominantly male, and it was Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. And there was only myself and 1 other woman on the crew in post-production. Went and became a VFX editor, and again, that was all predominantly male. I was the only female on this movie in the post-production side.
I've only really worked in the industry about a year or so PAing. I haven't witnessed a whole lot. I know it definitely exists. I experienced more of what it's like in film school and at UCLA specifically, and it's extremely diverse there. There are more female in my class than males, and I would say the faculty, my professors it's pretty equally male and female. And not just gender-wise, like race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. It's extremely diverse, and I think that's because they really want to foster an environment that celebrates diversity, but only because that's where like great storytelling is ultimately. You want to have all these different voices and hear different stories. You don't want to hear the same thing over and over again. And if you are part of a different culture and you have different experiences, then you definitely get different kinds of stories.
Writers in Hollywood are predominantly white males. For every 2.5 male writers, there is only 1 female. This shows the discrepancy between men and women respectively in film, broadcast, cable, and streaming.
Tragically, there's not a big change between, 2000, between 1990 and 2000 and now in terms of the amount of women. The graduate film schools always had a significant, our class was like 50% women at UCLA. But it never translated into the industry. Some of those would go on and do some independent work. I remember from UCLA, I think Allison Anders and stuff like that were the most successful, independent filmmakers. But you'd hear them and they'd make 1, 2 films and then they, poof, disappear from Hollywood.
When I was at Hawaii Five-0, I definitely felt that I was one of few crew members who were women. It was definitely male-oriented. I wouldn't say I witnessed or experienced a lot of sexism. I mean, there were guys always like asking me out, like as a joke. And I had a boyfriend at the time. It was nothing really super threatening, but you know, it is a little uncomfortable. It wasn't anything where I felt threatened or I had to report anyone in any way, but in just the nature of it, when there's like 50 guys and I don't know, 5 to 10 women, it creates an interesting environment. I obviously would have been more comfortable with women, and I hope in the future there will be more women.
It's more insidious than it is overt. At least that's what it has been in my experience. So certainly nobody ever said to me, well, it doesn't, you know, just shut up, little girl, or, you know, anything like that that sort of harkens back to the Mad Men era of overt misogyny. I would say, though, that the insidiousness comes in ways where, you know, you may be in a high level, but you're not necessarily taken as seriously as a man. You may have to fight harder for your ideas. You might get, you know, I certainly in performance reviews was often told, hey, you know, you're too intense, or you're too passionate, or you're too, you know, you're too ambitious. There's things that in a woman are considered detractors, whereas male counterparts, that's actually a strength for them.
I've experienced things where I've witnessed the head of a big production company greet the female actresses by kissing them on the lips. And I've been in a situation where, as a much lower down person, staff, I've had to hug the head of a production company whenever he came in. The males did not have to hug this person, to the point where eventually my stepmom said to me, "Stop getting out of your chair. Just pretend like you're not looking." I've been told that I've had a running joke for a whole year at one job where the men would announce that I was pregnant and make a whole joke about that, and even point out the male who I was friends with at work in a different department. He was in the writer's department. He was the writer's PA, and they would say, "It's his baby, it's his baby." Again, I never initiated that. I've also had a coworker sexually harass me and come into my office and tell me that my sass is sexy, and tell a coworker of mine that he wished he could kidnap me, which I filed a complaint with, and nothing happened. I just was told to just accept his apology because they would hate to lose me on this show. So I did, and I accepted it, and I still have the jobs that I've had.
I've witnessed executives who bully and make fun of their assistants. I know it's much easier for men to get promoted than it is for females. Females, you have to work twice as hard. Females, it usually takes twice as long to get a promotion than a man does. There's a lot of mentorship opportunities that you miss out on when you're female.
The blog, I don't know if you saw it, that came out about what Alexander Payne and his ADs did to this poor woman on one of the sets of one of his films, Election, you know, and how she was just so sexually harassed and bullied. And it was that very old, like 1950s, 60s, 70s BS where, you know, a man will walk up behind a woman and press against her butt and make sexual gestures and then laugh it off. You know, in the 80s you'd start getting into trouble for that. Still being done, but in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it's like, as a woman, if you said anything, you'd be fired. It'd be like, what are you talking about? You're in the man's world, so just, you know, deal with it.
Staggering statistics show that women are 3 times more likely than men to display sexy clothing, nudity, and attractiveness. With women being hypersexualized in the media, they are portrayed as sex objects, and this influence perpetuates how men perceive women in reality.
I think any woman would probably tell you that, you know, you have to do it better, faster, smarter, etc., to even be considered at like, you know, the average level of men. But I also think that's just true, not just in this industry. I think that's true for women in general. And I think that's something that's not going to necessarily change until we actually have a fundamental change in how we look at women and how we diminish the male gaze on women, and, you know, stop looking at women as sex objects or, you know, playthings or things that are meant to be subservient to men, but actually are looking at them and respecting them for the level of equality and leadership and I guess just capacity and capableness that they can bring.
The entertainment industry is very male dominated, and that's something that really didn't scare me. What I thought, I was thinking in my own mind, how can I strategically be part of that boys club, quote unquote. And really what I did was I participated in the big meetings. And when I would participate in the meetings, like for example, when I worked for the president of music at Paramount Pictures, I would sit at the table with him. I think there is a level of, you know, you give your stage presence, so to speak. So when you're at an important meeting, sit at the conference table. Don't sit at a chair off to the side of the conference room, as many people did and as kind of many women did. That's also referenced in the book by Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, which I found very fascinating. Always pull up a chair to the main table. And that's really what I did. I just tried to involve myself in as many important meetings as I could and as I was allowed to be. And even if I wasn't invited, I would always ask.
Men who are extremely misogynistic are starting to die out. It's getting there. It just takes time. It takes a lot of time. And hopefully more women make it past the manager level. That seems to be where a lot of us plateau. It's extremely difficult getting past that level.
This shows how the pipeline favors men in the industry. For every 5.6 male directors, there is one female director. Columbia Pictures hired director Mark Webb to direct The Amazing Spider-Man with a budget of $230 million after he directed only one single feature. Similarly, Walt Disney hired Joseph Kosinski to direct Tron Legacy with a multi-$100 million budget with only commercials on his resume. While Anne Fletcher, a woman, has directed 3 films since 2006 that made more than $100 million in worldwide sales and grossed $317 million just that year, but has never had a budget of more than $40 million. Unlike The Amazing Spider-Man, whose debut grossed $61 million. With examples like these, it's no wonder women began to compete with each other instead of collaborate.
And when I started, I experienced that firsthand. I had to do well without their help before I started being able to collaborate with them. And it shouldn't have been that way. So yeah, there's a lot of progress needs to be made with women mentoring other women.
I was working under a female executive, and it became very clear to me that the better that I would do in my position, the more threatened she felt. And so what I ultimately ended up doing was exiting that company.
Yes, I have experienced women kind of push me out of the way because I was a new young girl, right? So I've had a supervisor who would even say to me, they just like you because you're cute and young now, just wait till you're my age. And she would say that to me. And this woman also would call me at 3 a.m. demanding I was working and doing things. So it was just really keeping me on my toes. And I stepped up and I was just like, I'm gonna do what I can to keep my job.
There's certainly women out there who you can tell are more, you know, this is my territory and I'm going to hold on to it. But I've been really lucky. I've had a lot of women in my life who tried to help me and tried to help me grow and acted as mentors as best they could in their situations. I think the bigger issue that I saw was that there just wasn't a lot of space at the top. So once that space is occupied, unless that upward movement happens, you know, so for example, if a vice president doesn't move out, the director can't possibly move up into that position either. And so when you hit that, if a female is tapped out at the vice president level, there's really, the females underneath her, there's not really anywhere else for them to go unless they leave the company or leave the industry.
I have experienced that, unfortunately, with females because it's so competitive. You know, sometimes, yeah, they see a young up-and-coming woman in the industry underneath them, and unfortunately, yes, it becomes threatening, and yes, then the onus is back on you to figure out what you want to do about it.
I think I had a hard time in the beginning, but as soon as I sort of proved myself on my own, things started to open up for me with working with other women.
We're going to see more women. I think because we're sort of at this weird time in our culture where everybody is mad about everything. And some of that I think is just the media perpetuating the, just the general outrage that everybody feels, even though there's a lot of outrage and not a lot of action not a lot of healthy action to fix that outrage. But I do think, things like the Oscars So White controversy 2 years in a row, where you have, major award categories that don't have a single minority in them. That causes a lot of outrage, but it also causes a lot of discussion. There's a lot of podcasts out there that talk about male-female issues, that talk about issues in the arts. And I think I think we've reached the point where it's like we don't really know what it's gonna be. But then you start to see different kinds of shows do well, different kinds of movies do well. The two that are popping into my mind right now are Empire is a big hit, Blackish is a big hit in a lot of different ways. And so I think if you start to see these things where if corporations are about money, and if they can make money with it, they'll do it. Whether it's women, they'll do it with a three-eyed raven from Game of Thrones. But they'll do what they need to do to make money. And, I think it's also just pendulum shifting. Like right now every time you go to the movies, there's another superhero movie. There are movies that used to be made in the 70s that would not get made today by the studios. But I also think that that's going to start switching because people get tired of it and they won't go to the movies. They want to see good stories and, they want to see themselves and they want to see good characters. So hopefully it'll change.
There's a lot of different groups, and two of them are these female groups. One's called WAVE, the other one's called WIT. So WAVE is a generic group for women to bond and find ways to connect with each other and sort of try to find ways for women to grow in the company and to employ more women at the company. And also other things WAVE has looked at is looking at, on the production side, how do we get more female screenwriters, filmmakers, how do we create equal pay opportunities or even pay women more for a film than a man. And so Women's History Month just happened, and these two groups did a phenomenal job putting on all these events for Women's History Month. One of them was a panel where we met with a bunch of high-level executives. One is the top producer at Sony Pictures Animation. There's a website called Women's Club, or where it's a website where a bunch of women filmmakers are listed.
I've been really fortunate in the TV side of things, meeting female editors, and female editors really kind of have your back. And I guess that's a benefit, it's because they understand that we are predominantly male industry. We're in a predominantly male industry. So they look at you and they think like, oh, great, we got another girl here. When certain sexual harassment situations have come up in my career, I've been able to go to these female editors and say, what would you do? How would you react to this? And a lot of the times they're like, that's disgusting, but I'm not surprised.
Television has always been considered kind of the, wicked stepsister, the ugly duckling to film, right? It's not the art form that cinema is. You get the snobs that it's not cinema. Well, so where did women go? They went to the second-tiered platform. But you could argue in the last 10 years, definitely in the last 5 years, that's flipping itself, that actually the real artistic, real cinematic, the real filmic storytelling happening in the visual world is now on television. And women have a stronger foothold there than they've ever had in film.
The film industry serves inequality to everyone, not branded young, white, straight males. This list of the top networks displays vividly that there is an inclusion problem in our media, society, and most importantly, our national belief system. For change to commence, women must work together in order to change the deeply ingrained attitudes about women's competence. Instead of being pitted against each other, it's time to conspire to alter ancient stereotypical mindsets.
I say if you're not doing something because of fear, that's not a good reason. That's what I say. You can convince yourself in your head out of doing something before you even take action. So first and foremost, take action. Write your goals down. See what you want to do.
Have a strong backbone and know that you're not always going to be treated the way you deserve to be treated. And you will, I don't want to say like it's just going to happen, but there's things you can put your foot down to and do it. Learn what that is and do it.
Don't give up. Don't give up on your dream whatsoever. Try harder than anyone else. Never sleep. Always know how hard you're working is never hard enough. There's probably someone working harder than you. If you want to be a screenwriter, write more than anyone else. And find a writer's group to collaborate with. And any notes they give you, take them, know that they're helping you, and just keep writing and writing and writing. If you want to be a director, find projects to work on. Find actors who want to work with you. Find a production crew who you can sort of talk into working for free for you. Apparently that happens. Like, you can talk people into working on a project for you for free. It's crazy. That does happen. People just love to create stuff. You got to find a good group of people who support you, but you also got to work harder than anyone else. And it's all about connections.
Align yourself with people you know in a network, and then grow that network. Don't only participate in events with alumni, participate in events with friends of the university. And just keep growing your network, and don't think gender specific, think you specific and what you want to do.
I think it's very easy as women to see ourselves in competition with other women at all points, whether this girl is prettier than me, she's thinner than me, her hair is better, her skin is better, anything like that. A lot of that tends to focus on the surface part of it. And I think as women, we make a lot of judgments about other women based on what they look like, what they're wearing, how they act. And I think that, underneath everybody is just a person trying to do their best and trying to get ahead. I would say it's tough out there. Like, don't expect that anything's going to be handed to you. Expect you have to work really, really hard. Expect that there's going to be times when you feel super defeated. And I think it's those times in particular where you need to reach out to your network.
I gravitate towards women because I've been in their shoes in the in the PA world. I've had female PAs that have been able to come to me and talk about what they're hearing, what they're seeing, how they're being mistreated. And I'm now in a position where I can say something, right? I will never not say something again. For the past year, I've really put my foot down and been like, I'm never letting someone talk to me like that again or make me hug them when I don't want to.
There's something that I'd like to mention about the question that you said, that I feel the hindrance in women sometimes is themselves. It's their own mind thinking that, wow, there's men in the executive positions. I can't possibly go up for that job. Ask, do. Try and motivate yourself to go above and beyond your job role. I think sometimes the onus is back on the woman for not asking and for not trying and just being intimidated. And by the way, we're intimidated in our heads sometimes. So we're thinking we've already cut ourselves off from that job position before we've even asked.
The other thing that I think is really important is integrity. And I think Santa Clara was one of those places where everybody here kind of had the same background, and the university really thrives on a moral culture and talks a lot about integrity and making the right choices and doing the right thing. That is never going to serve you wrong as a human. And I think it's very easy when you're feeling pressured or you're feeling stressed to try and make the easy decision sometimes. And I would say that will always come back and bite you in the ass, whether people know about it or not. You still have to go home and look at yourself in the mirror every day and making choices that will allow you to keep looking in the mirror and be proud of yourself and be proud of who you are and be empowered as a woman. I think that's the most important thing.